Hi there. I'm very excited to share the work that I've done with my incredible collaborators at the University of Washington on opportunities and challenges involving users in project-based HCI education. So some of you might use Alan Dix et al.'s famous human-computer interaction textbook, where they highlight that the core of interaction design is putting the user first, keeping the user in the center, and remembering the user at the end. And we also know that there exist many methods for involving users, such as Nielsen Group's famous chart of different methods that you can use when engaging users in your research projects. And also we know there are many models of design that overview the process of involving users. But we ask in this work, how do and should HCI educators prepare students to work with users? We found that in a review of the literature on human-computer interaction and design, there are few that closely examine engagements between designers and users in courses. But we know that involving users in student design projects in courses is common. This picture is a picture of my senior capstone when I was an undergraduate student, where we worked with two clients that had a prior relationship with our university that then I was able to work with them and design a well-played assembly for them with my teammates. But as I just mentioned in my example, often students select users with convenience sampling. And this is a problem for HCI education to really consider and reflect on which users we involve in our courses and how HCI students are learning to work with a broad range of users. At the same time, we know that there are challenges to working with end users in courses. Students may face anxiety working with users they don't have a prior relationship with. Establishing connections between students, educators, and users takes time and intentionality. And we have to be conscious of the burden that it might place on users to be involved throughout the design process. For this work, we partnered a master's student HCI studio prototyping course with a children's co-design team. And this is one look into what that experience was like.
1, 2, 3.
So in that video clip, you see the children opening up a box that the design students put together, and they open it up and they talk about the different pieces and parts that they like of that prototype. And specifically in this work, we ask, how do HCI students engage with users unlike themselves during their design process? And what value do they perceive in working with users different from themselves in their design and reflection process? To give you some context on the course, it is an HCI course that is within a one-year design master's program. It's studio-based, cross-disciplinary, and focuses on teaching HCI and interaction design courses. And the co-design team that we partnered with is an existing intergenerational design team called Kids Team UW, where children, undergraduates, and adults come together to form this design team and give different ideas. And for the course, the design challenge was for the HCI students to co-design a STEM learning experience for youth with Kids Team UW. And this is an overview of the co-design process that we followed. Today I'll focus more on the design time, but I encourage you to read Yip et al.'s 2017 CHI paper to understand more of the co-design process that we went through. In session 1, it took place weeks 3 and 4 of the quarter, and it was the first time that the HCI students had met the children. And during the session, each design team had a station in which children rotated in pairs for 10 minutes each. Session 2 took place weeks 7 and 8 of the quarter, and at this point, the HCI students had iterated on their prototypes with course instructors and peers, and they were close to their final deliverables, which included an interactive hardware prototype, a video, and a lesson plan to go along with their prototype. Our methods included video analysis. We audio and video record all of the co-design sessions, and there were 8 co-design sessions, and each session lasted 90 minutes. And so we had 720 minutes of video data. We also conducted follow-up interviews with the HCI students after the course had ended. And out of the 34 enrolled students in the class, we interviewed 14. Of those 14, they were each representative of one team within the whole course. And we asked them questions about the co-design experience, and we also gave them a video probe where we showed them a 1 to 2 minute clip of their interaction with the children, and then asked them some questions about what was happening in that video clip. And finally, we triangulated our methods with artifact analysis. After the course ended, we asked students if they felt comfortable sharing with us their design documentation, their final artifacts, pictures of their thought process, and we triangulated our methods by analyzing this artifacts as well. And so today I'm going to talk about 3 findings. I encourage you to look at our paper in detail for detail on these findings, but I'm going to highlight a little bit of each 3 of them. So to start with communicating with users, in the paper we highlight 2 sub-themes of building rapport and session management. So with respect to building rapport, Nina says it perfectly. We had 2 individual sessions. It's really hard to build rapport with them. And we recognized this before. We knew that it was a challenge to both get to know your user and also get them to build the rapport with them to contribute to your design ideas. And for that reason, in the co-design process, we have time for snack time and circle time before we get to the actual design time. But we found that, as you see in this picture, design students self-segregated and the children also self-segregated. So they weren't using that time to build those connections. And we saw, as I mentioned, the self-segregation. Also during snack time, we saw that some people felt uncomfortable sharing personal details to everyone that they didn't know about their name, their age, and kind of the question of the day that we ask. And then we also recognized that it was a limited time and number of sessions, but we were working within the constraints of a course. But we also saw successful strategies that the HCI students employed to overcome these challenges. And that included adapting their language to mimic the children or to meet where they were talking, using welcoming body expressions, dynamically changing between activities, and demonstrating empathy with the children, whether they couldn't figure out the prototype or they were trying to contribute their ideas and couldn't communicate them as well. And so with adapting language, here I'll highlight a quick video which shows how the design students, which are in circles, responded dynamically and adapted their language to the children, which are pointed to in arrows.
He's just like, yo, 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 yo.
This went in a direction I was not seeing.
That should be turned into a rap.
That's right.
Your leg spells.
So the robot can rap now.
So in this clip, what you see is they're all designing ideas for a robot, and they're trying to figure out what should the robot do, what do we want it to be, and the children are talking about poop and rapping, and the design students are going along with their ideas and responding, but also bringing back the conversation to, okay, what does this mean for the design and the robot that we're working on together here? And with respect to session management, we saw that the design students were going in to give their ideas, but were challenged by receiving unexpected feedback, by figuring out how to respond to the children. And so here I encourage you to read our paper to understand more about the session management finding. With respect to complex role of power dynamics, we found that not only were there power dynamics between designers and users, but also between designers and other adults in this course. And we looked at those nuances and interactions between the designers and the other stakeholders, whether they were the children from the users or other adults. So Bia in her follow-up interview talked about, in China, we have this really strict culture where you need to respect the elders, the teachers, especially when you're at a young age. The teacher has higher authority, and I know that's so different from the Western world. I find that to be fascinating. And here, Bia is talking about how when they went to the co-design sessions where we strive for the principle of equal partnerships for children and designers, for everyone to contribute their ideas, that there was this tension in the back of her mind trying to figure out how we are authoritative to the children, or how much do we navigate, like letting them contribute our ideas, but also their children were adults. And we found that many students relied on their prior experiences with children and brought those to this experience, whether it was camp experience that they had learning how to work with children, or whether it was prior experiences of their expectation of what it was like to be a child. We also found power dynamics when at play between designers and users when engaging multiple users. And so in this screenshot, what you see is 2 children, because they were rotating in pairs to each station, are looking at each other's prototypes. So one prototype has a catalyst, which is going to grow, and the other one doesn't. And so the child in green is the one that doesn't have the catalyst. And in the video, we see him go, wah, because his isn't as exciting as the other child. And so there might have been some differences in the children's experiences based on how the design students set up the co-design session design time. And finally, we found that they navigated positioning the children's input among other stakeholders' input. So Toby here says, sometimes I think that even though the kids are really excited about something, then I have to think about the feasibility of it too. Like they're interested, but is it educational for them? And then the sub-theme that we highlight with designers and other adults was mainly with the facilitator of Kids Team UW, as the design students were trying to navigate how much agency they had over the design time. And in our paper, we discussed how with any user partnership in courses, there will be a facilitator, whether it's older adults or whether it's a Latino community user group. And so we have to try to figure out as educators how we support HCI students in navigating these power dynamics between themselves and users, but also between themselves and other adults. And for our third finding, we highlight the perceived values through reflection that we saw in the use of our video probes and our follow-up interviews. And in our paper, we talk about the role of navigating complexity in this experience and naming opportunities, that students named opportunities for future improvement as designers, and also the difference between remembering an interaction and noticing the interaction after watching their video clips. So with respect to navigating complexity, one student, Abigail, talked about how this experience showed her the value of being flexible. I need to work on my feet and be adaptable. Develop more flexible study guides, or like learning how to extrapolate data I didn't intend to receive. These are all valuable things. They're just not traditional academic definitions of education. It was more experiential. And with respect to naming and remembering, I encourage you to look at the paper as we highlight different things that we can do to support HCI students in not only having these complex experiences in the classroom, but also making sense of them through reflection and through video probes. And so now I'll touch on implications for what this means for the CHI community. And our paper discusses encouraging design complexity between HCI students and end users. And in this design complexity, making sure that it's within a safe environment where students, HCI students, can figure out and navigate how to become better designers. There's also facilitators, and there's also different users that are involved in this process. So in a safe but complex space. And we found that through these follow-up interviews and this pedagogical practice of reflection, HCI students were able to consider how to best strategize and work with users that were different from themselves with respect to ethnic and social identities, in this case, the children. And we think that HCI educators can support this by anticipating the challenge we uncover in our paper and also developing pedagogical ways to prepare designers through role-playing or reading case studies. Second, we recommend drawing on reflective practices in HCI pedagogy and education. And so in this case, we really found that our video clips can be a really important pedagogical tool that can be used more frequently in HCI for students to look at those video clips and not only review their study sessions, but go more in depth about the complex nature of their interactions with their users that they might not remember just by trying to think back to what happened, but actually watching the interaction and then discussing the interaction with the users. And so we propose creating a repository of case studies to reflect on difficult interactions between designers and users, and creating a video club so that HCI students, so that designers that are looking to improve their practice with users can think and reflect on their engagement with users. We are currently in year 2 of the future work of this research, and we're implementing a lot of our key takeaways from year 1 into year 2 to see how we can best support HCI students as they're navigating this complex environment and learning and figuring out how to engage these children as users in their design process within the constraints of a course. And I want to thank all of my collaborators, our undergraduate and graduate researchers, and the National Science Foundation for their support. And with that, I would love if you reached out with questions after you watched this video and read our paper, and see if there's anything I can help answer, clarify, or if you have ideas about our work. Thank you.